Well, as many of you know, because I do like to talk about it, Growing Boulder has staged for the last 2 years our annual Wisdom Walk, in which we bring together a large intergenerational, intercultural, interracial group of all ages. I mean, we've got strollers and wheelchairs, we've got toddlers and teens and elders in their 90s, all taking a leisurely 1 mile stroll together. We've had 3 and 4 generation families participate. We've placed individuals and strangers into intergenerational groups, and along the course, we have signs with questions that prompt conversation if necessary. And, questions like, what do people get wrong about someone your age? Or maybe, what's your biggest fear? What do you want to do that you haven't done yet? And in just 1 mile, it's really remarkable because friendships are made, bonds are formed, and stereotypes are smashed. And of course, the goal of our Wisdom Walk is to encourage intergenerational relationships as a way to confront ageism, which is, as you guys should know, it's widespread, it's unchallenged, it has far-reaching negative consequences for people of all ages. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give young people is a more realistic and a non-ageist view of growing older, because multiple studies have revealed that by the time children are just 4 years old, they already have a negative view of aging. And that is devastating, because those with a positive view of aging live on average about 7.5 years longer. And not only do they live longer, but they're happier, they're healthier, and they do dramatically reduce their future healthcare cost. Unfortunately, there are fewer opportunities for intergenerational relationships these days. And let's be honest, I mean, most young people don't want to interact with older people because they fear aging. They don't want to even think about it. So why would they actually want to be around it? And all of this by way of explanation of why I'm so excited to speak to our guest today, because she has spent more than 2 decades bringing older and younger generations together. She is the consummate bridge builder, a problem solver, an innovative thought leader, the co-CEO of CoGenerate, a nonprofit that's dedicated to a strategy for social impact that it calls CoGeneration. Older and younger generations all working together to solve our most pressing problems. So let's get with it as we welcome Eunice Lin Nichols. Eunice, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
I appreciate so much. And let's start with the mission of CoGenerate, because I know until about 18 months ago, I was following you guys as a company known as Encore, but you're rebranded. Why the change?
Well, we did spend more than 20 years focused on building the concept of Encore, this idea that we would create new pathways to purpose and continued contribution as people aged. We called it the Encore career. And the reality is, as we were doing that work, so much of it was focused on what older adults could and should do for younger generations. But in doing that work, we realized that the real magic was so often in the with, not just what they could do for younger generations, but what, when older and younger got together, they could do together. We really leaned into that, as you said, about 18 months ago when we transitioned from being Encore to CoGenerate, to lean into that with part of the equation. Today, we're fully focused on what older and youngers can do together, bridging the divides, combating ageism, as you mentioned at the top of your show, and bringing older and younger together for the better of the world. And I'll add one piece to that, which is, I know you mentioned that young people can fear growing older, but the reality is when we focus on what older and younger can do for good in the world, there's actually a lot of desire, in particular from young people, to work with older adults for the greater good. And so that may be something we dig more into in your show.
No, I appreciate you mentioning that. And honestly, as I was saying that, I'm thinking to myself, Eunice is not going to like this. But it is interesting, because that's what we find here at Growing Boulder. We built a business by looking at aging through a prism of opportunity and possibility, and not simply loss and limitation. And we do that by sharing the stories of ordinary people that are, living joyful lives. And what we have found is that the message resonates with younger adults almost as much, and in many cases more, than it does with older adults, because we are showing them something other than what our ageist culture has shown them. So thank you for that. And but speaking of our culture, Eunice, we're living in a society that is more age diverse, but yet more age segregated than ever. What's the overall impact of that?
Yeah, I appreciate you starting here because I think often we're not focused on the dramatic shifting demographics in our country. And so, like you said, we're the most age diverse time in human history. I don't think people understand that back in the 1900s, we had twice as many young people as older people as you'd expect. But today, there are as many people who are 7 years old as 17 as 70. And so it just means society is shaped very differently. And that diversity can bring real opportunity for a connection across divides, for bringing different assets to the table. As you mentioned, I love the focus on opportunity. But on the flip side, we're also, as a society, structured to be deeply age segregated, oftentimes for the sake of efficiency. It's why we have young people in schools and middle people in the workforce and older people, unfortunately, often on the margins, off to the side. And it's the combination, I think, of incredible age diversity with deep age segregation in our systems that actually allows for ageism to rise and then spiral out of control, because it means young people aren't necessarily having the opportunity to get to know older people deeply and authentically, and vice versa. And when all you have is a stereotype of somebody that you see, possibly a bad actor that you might see in the news or in media, those stories start to proliferate. By and large, when I talk to younger or older people, there's actually somebody that they know, and somebody who's a relative, a grandparent, a grandchild, or a friend across the age spectrums that they deeply love, deeply care about. And when they can focus on the reality of somebody who's 20, 30, 40 years older or younger than them, they have deep feelings of love and respect for that person. If we can help more of those relationships and friendships to spread, I think in some ways that's the biggest tool we have to combat ageism, is actual knowledge of the other.
Well, I know you don't need me to tell you that our culture needs you and your organization now more than ever, because it's not just difficult in many cases, in most cases, for different generations to get together. I think in a very real way, our culture pits the young against the old. I mean, there's this scarcity narrative, if you will, not enough jobs, not enough money, not enough opportunity. And it's easy to blame another generation for that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of been forced into this zero-sum mentality where if a younger person gets something, resources, opportunity, the older person doesn't get it, and vice versa. I think that's one reason why we really are doubling down on the idea of co-generation. What does it look like to actually shift the systems and the models we have and look at places where older and younger together both can succeed, both get what they need and want. We look at areas where older and younger are struggling with the same issues, as an example, and where turning to each other might solve one another's challenges. Social isolation and loneliness is one of them. Young people are reporting higher rates of loneliness than any other generation. And we know older adults often, because they're moving out of the workforce, the way society has age siloed them, end up on the margins and therefore more isolated. Older and younger friendships are actually a solution to each other's core fundamental challenge of isolation and loneliness. We also look at housing. Intergenerational housing is on the rise. I think it's 4 times more prevalent today than in years past. And one way to look at that is young people are struggling to be able to afford living on their own, to be able to buy that house. Older adults are struggling to age in place, to afford to live in the homes that they've been in forever. Neighborhoods are gentrifying. That also makes it more challenging. There's been a rise in innovation around older empty nesters opening up a spare bedroom to a young person at a discounted price and providing a little bit of help around the house. And as they're doing that, these wonderful sort of extended family-like relationships form and both boats float. So we're really interested in places where that zero-sum mentality does not need to be the norm.
It's great to hear what positive is happening. It's better, Eunice, to hear it in your voice, to see it on your face. It's a big challenge, for our culture right now, and to have a messenger like you, an influencer like you, if you will, who can deliver the message in a positive way. It's easy to see why you're so important in that field. And I did see, this short note on some of your social media channels where you say, quote, you're obsessed with connecting across generations to create a new kind of extended family. Where did this obsession come from? Because I said in the intro, you've been doing this for more than 20 years. And since we're talking about age, you don't appear to be an older woman. So how did you get so interested and connected with an older generation and intergenerational connectivity at such a young age?
Yeah. So, in some ways, I feel like this has been an obsession my entire life. It's always easier to look back at the narrative of your life and see the threads. I'm the daughter of immigrants from Taiwan, and like many immigrants, my parents, once they were settled in the Midwest where I was born, they brought my grandparents over. So for the early years of my life, I actually lived with my grandparents. They were really critical in being part of helping me connect with my Chinese culture that otherwise would have felt very distant. They were in my after-school program. They were there. Both of my parents were working, and my grandparents were there to be the safe place for myself and my sister as we were growing up. Fast forward to my sort of young adult life, and I ended up out in the workforce where I was, both in college and then right after with young people. And that was great for about 2 minutes. And then I started to feel this sense of disconnection from, I think, a way I had been raised, really surrounded by extended family and aunties and uncles, some related to me, many not. But that's what felt natural to me. And I didn't find it in my natural work environment or in college, until I landed at, frankly, the organization I'm at today. 3 years out of college, I went on to run one of our early signature programs. It was an intergenerational program that brought older adults from the neighborhood into public schools to help kids read. And it was my job to go out and find the elders in the neighborhood and recruit them into spaces where they were not represented, but where they were so needed. My other team that I had to work with, because we were a scrappy nonprofit, were these young AmeriCorps Vistas, young people doing like a year of national service, being paid at the level of poverty. They were in San Francisco where I was doing this work, but disconnected from the neighborhoods. And here I had these 200 elders that had lived there for decades. And that team of young adults at a formative time in their career, and frankly, I was only 3 years older than them, and this team of elders together went in to solve this issue of helping kids read by third grade. I'll say I often thought about that time as, wow, isn't it great that we have this like relational capital that we're building that allows us to help kids learn how to read and write. Years later, I look back and I actually think we might have had it flipped. We had this great tutoring program that was the platform for delivering love and for delivering it intergenerationally. And I'll close by saying that the impact on me as a young person at that time is that I was surrounded by elders collaborating with them, which meant I saw their assets, their skills, the talent that they were still contributing. My oldest volunteer was 102 years old. And yeah, there were times I went to funerals of volunteers who served until their very last day. To be a young person and see, I had all kinds of ageist views as well, but I also had this recurring real reality of older adults that I saw every day who were giving their very best in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, who gave to the very last day, who were deeply committed to young people in the next generation, who had fun. We had great potlucks. We had great parties. It was a group of elders in one of the neighborhoods that threw me my first baby shower. I was surrounded by love. And I think, once again, those things have prevented me from having the dominant ageist views in society be the talk track in my mind, because I just have too many data points that show me another way. And I also will say this is it's not all, rose tinted glasses. I have a very real view, maybe more than many of my peers, on what it means to grow old, because I've seen that also. There are physical challenges, mental challenges, family dynamics, loss of income, many of those. I've seen that as well. So I also, you can combat fear by stepping into it and actually knowing people who are in the midst of it and are surviving it, and doing it in relationship with others and seeing how a community can come around, and the importance in particular of intergenerational community in those later stages of life creates the cushion needed to be able to have different stages of life come in and contribute. So that's a long way of saying that I think the importance of intergenerational relationships is the most powerful tool for combating ageism and helping young people step into older life with more confidence and compassion.
Well, you have obviously understood at a very deep level the value of intergenerational community long before all of the research has come out in recent years. We all know it now. The culture knows it. The thought makers, the policymakers know it. So let me ask you this. This is an election year, I've been told. And at this moment, I've not heard any candidate talk at all about ageism or intergenerational connections. If you were, and I wish you were, Eunice, if you were moderating a presidential debate, what would you ask the candidates? What's important? What do we need to hear from them?
Yeah. Oh, what a great question. Boy, would I love to moderate a conversation to shine a light on this topic. I mean, we started at the top of the segment looking at the dramatic shifting age demographics in our country. We're not just a young country, and we're not just an old country. We have everything in between, and our structures, our systems, our policies need to be built for the width, for older and younger together. We cannot afford to segregate or silo the generations. We can't afford the zero-sum thinking. No one generation can solve the problem. We know the problems in front of us. They're too big. They're too big for any one generation to solve. So I think the question I would want to ask our candidates is one, I think we're safe to say that they have all experienced the dark edge of ageism in the media that is out there. Looking at their age. And I would say, one, what are they doing to be allies and filling their teams with young people as well in legitimate roles of leadership so that they can be co-generational? We don't have a system that allows for co-presidents, but I would say we have a system that allows for a lot of distributed leadership. We need to have younger voices in the room with those who've had tremendous years of experience. I would also want to say, can we look at the areas where, as once again, we talked about earlier, where olders and youngers could be the solution to each other's problems? And I think when it comes to economic opportunity, job opportunities, older adults are going to need to work longer. If we're living to 100 and we have a 60-year career, what are the chances we're all going to be doing the same job for 60 years? Very slim. What does higher education look like for older adults? It wasn't designed for them. And not just like, nice classes on the side, but what would it look like to bring in more older adults to re-career, retrain, upskill in university systems? How might we actually encourage olders and youngers to do that together? Are the policies there for that? Are the structures there for that? Housing, food insecurity, even climate change. There are ways in which we can tackle all of that better if we brought older and youngers to the table. So I'd love to see some creative thinking on how we might do this with each other instead of apart.
Amen to that. You are definitely leading a movement. By the way, folks, we're speaking with Eunice Lin Nichols, who is the co-CEO of CoGenerate. You're leading a movement, Eunice. Did you create a word or at least a verb? Because you always talk about let's co-generate together. I've not heard that before I started paying attention to you guys. Did you bring that to our vernacular?
We are borrowing that term from the energy sector, much like we borrowed our earlier term encore for encore careers from the music area. We love to look at where there's resonance in existing words, but that are off in the corners. For us, encore was looking at like how might you have an encore career, a second or third act that was maybe even more fun than your first, and something that people would say, encore, come back to do this. When we were looking for the same resonance and landed on CoGenerate, intergenerational, obviously all our work is about intergenerational connection and collaboration. But intergenerational is a little too broad. You could have an older helping a younger helping an older. Sometimes it's just the existence of older and younger together. The co piece really focuses on the dynamic connection between older and younger and how they can co-create, co-design, collaborate on more together. In the energy sector, it's really about how one form of energy you can take the almost like the waste from what's created and funnel it back to create even more energy. So we love that visual and are kind of co-opting it for the social sector.
And by your definition, I mean, how is the work product better when we co-generate? I mean, what are your talking points when you tell somebody, when you tell a corporation, when you tell an organization or group to have a group that co-generates? How is it better?
Yeah. So there's actually growing research out there as well about the secret sauce of olders and youngers. A lot of it will feel very intuitive. I think right now, younger people are obviously they've been raised in with digital technology at the core. So much it means that they are used to a certain pace and speed of change. We have a multi-generational team right now at CoGenerate, and when it comes to how do we get the word out, how do we mobilize and organize, what are the messages that are going to resonate with culture out there? We can't do that without young people in the room. I found that having older folks in the room brings something incredibly important, their ability to synthesize and look at complex systems to help us connect the past to the present to the future, as well as having just lived through the ups and downs of a longer arc of life. When the pandemic hit, I found myself in a Zoom room that had older adults and younger people. The elders were so important because they had been through other periods in life where it felt like things were deeply falling apart. And they had survived it and had the ability to say, this is the time to stay in relationship. Let's not churn and move straight to problem solving when we need to sit and be with each other and just connect. I think it takes a certain wisdom and years lived to know when that's the right move. And having said that, some of my most favorite relationships are ones where you have what we would call an old soul, a young person who has like just a pathway into that wisdom, and a modern elder, somebody who is older but is bringing the freshness of creativity. So even as I say that, it's really bringing two people together who just naturally are coming from different perspectives and life experiences and bring it to the table.
Fair to say there's a bit of a tug of war going on right now, Eunice. I mean, so much cultural momentum pulling us apart, families disintegrating, moving apart, and in organizations like yours, people like you, research backing up what you do, underscoring the value of coming together. Is there a bit of tug of war going on right now? And if so, are you optimistic that you're going to win?
I think I'd love to focus your listeners or viewers on a report that we did about a year and a half ago with the University of Chicago and the National Opinion Research Center. Because we, in that tug of war, I think a big question, people are like, oh, you guys say older and younger want to come together to do good work together, but is that actually true? And I think people question whether or not it is. So we're like, let's go out and let's just ask. We had over 1,000 people answer a set of survey questions. And it turns out almost everybody, 96%, actually believe that cogeneration will make life better in America. And 93% said cogeneration will reduce divisions in our society. So there's actually incredible uniformity in the concept of it. But then we get to the flip side. Okay, why aren't more people coming together across generational differences to collaborate? And it turns out a large majority said that they don't see the pathways. So this gets to the age segregation of our society. Even if you want to be in relationship with somebody 20, 30 years older or younger than you, we're not structured that way. They don't know where to find each other. And then when they do, a large percentage are actually anxious because we have lost the exercise of the muscles for how to relate to one another, the language. I think there's some anxiety and fear that the other generation won't like them. I mean, it's kind of like friendship 101. You get nervous when you walk in and aren't sure how to engage. So to me, I feel like our research points to both the need for intentional structures for bringing older and younger together. As natural as it is, we need to make it easier. And then we also need to equip older and younger with some of the tools and skills for coming together. A lot of that's based on these are just people. Learn each other's life stories. Get to know somebody first. If you're older, don't assume that the thing that you're bringing is advice and mentorship. That young person might be able to advise and mentor you. So come and understand each other's stories and gifts and skills first. And then how might we create more spaces that feel more equalized, where sometimes the power dynamic is skewed towards the older person, sometimes it's skewed towards the younger person. How might we actually intentionally design a space so that they're coming on more equal footing and allow for these authentic relationships to proliferate from there? The desire is there. I think it's on us to make sure that people can access it.
So short of waiting for an email from CoGenerate or maybe a text from Eunice Lin Nichols, what can we do as individuals? I mean, we've heard what you say. We understand the value of it. How can individuals plug into the CoGenerate lifestyle?
I think a huge place where we can both practice and do good is to look for opportunities to get involved in your community, to volunteer, to step onto an advisory team, whatever. Find a space where you can actually collaborate with people of a different age, and don't just look for something with your own age cohort. I think that's comfortable. That can be more comfortable, but I would say take a step. And there are many places in your neighborhood that will have naturally intergenerational spaces. Your local food bank, your local community center, your local YMCA is going to have older and younger people together. How might you actually step into those spaces, look for them? But even if you go there, I think our natural instinct is often to kind of stick with our own. I would say challenge yourself each day to, if you see somebody who is a bit younger or older than you, to go up and say hello, start a conversation, learn a little bit of their life story. I think it all starts with relationship. And some of the best ways to build relationships are to go do something with somebody. It gives you just enough scaffolding that it doesn't feel super awkward to go up and strike up a conversation. The benefit of taking a go experiment by volunteering and being involved in your community approach is you also make the community better as you do it. We have to kind of get ourselves out of our homes and out of our natural silos in order to do that.
And finally, if you will, can we pull out even a little bit further and give us an even bigger picture Eunice Lin Nichols takeaway? Because you are very much a bridge between generations, not young, not old, connected in very meaningful ways to both. What's the moral of the story of life? What have you learned that we all should know?
I think we are on the doorstep of the most age-diverse society we've ever been. We can continue to persist and walk through that in our own siloed ways, or we can have the courage to reach out and make a connection across age, across difference. What I would say is when we do it, we gain so much more. We can't be little islands. When you reach out to somebody 20, 30 years older, you're going to get all that life experience and wisdom along with it. And if you're an older person reaching down to a younger person, similarly, it's astounding how differently young people are thinking and operating today. If you build a friendship, a real authentic relationship with a young person, they will be your portal into how to be today. So I find that really exciting. There are a lot of opportunities for connection. This is not rocket science. This is not, as much as I'd love to see overhaul in system supports and policies, that's necessary, but there's actually nothing preventing us from just reaching out to somebody in our neighborhood, in our faith institution, at the gym, at the grocery store, as we volunteer out in the world, somebody who's older or younger than us, and just start making those connections. We need to exercise that in order to get good at it. And I believe we can do it together.
Well, we are all grateful, or should be, that you find this so exciting and that you found your life's passion so early on. Eunice Lin Nichols, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Folks, she is leading a movement to CoGenerate, if you will, to create a more diverse culture and a more promising future for everyone of every age. And you can find out more about her and her mission at cogenerate.org.